Okay, guys, I thought I would cover this ETFs. They pretty much have ETFs for everything. I know a lot of people have been kind of talking about Congress and the Democrat, the House and the Senate, how they, know information that before the general public know, and they in charge of the laws and stuff. And a lot of people would like to mimic whatever or invest in whatever Congress invested in, either for the Republicans and Democrats. And the main, particular person that a lot of people would say, if it's not inside trading, Nancy, Nancy Pelosi. So we know when it comes to the Congress, Nancy Pelosi is the best investor of all time. Coincidentally, that she seems to always get the picks right, whether it's with Tesla, Nvidia, so many. The reason why I'm making this video because they actually have a ETF where they actually have two, one for the Democrat and one for the Republican. And the ticker symbol for the Democrats, we would know, is NANC, for stand for Nancy Pelosi. Now, this particular one is they do the whole Democrat. So let's look at this one. So this is the ticker NANC, unusual whales. So whales is kind of like larger investors. So it says unusual whale subversion Democratic ETF. Invest in equity securities purchased or sold by Democratic members of Congress or their spouse. Investment by members of Congress and their spouse must be disclosed, I think quarterly, I can't remember. So now, because they have to be disclosed, they have an ETF that can kind of mirror that. Now they also have one as well for Ted Cruz, this guy, but this one would be for the Republican side, leading that, and the ticker for that is um, Cruz, KRUZ, but his name is spelled that way. So I thought it was like, oh, this was kind of be really interesting. They pretty much, like I said, they got ETS for everything, but I thought this one was definitely interesting. And of course, I'm going to compare how the returns is doing to the Nasdaq, to the S&P, and all of that stuff. And I'll also talk about Nancy Pelosi returns. I wish they just had an ETF just for whatever Nancy's picking, because this one right here, even though it's has her NANC ticker, it's all of the whole as the Democratic Congress all together, not just Nancy. But we know when it comes to stock options and all the right picks, Nancy seemed to be better than Buffett. I'm just saying. And I'll kind of show you. I'm kind of joking around, but low key, it seems to me that Nancy, when it comes to big plays or big announcements and stuff, she just happened to get in at the perfect time. Perfect time. Um, but yeah, let's start comparing the returns between the two. So I kind of also jotted down year to date, Nance NANC is up 5%. I believe Cruise is up year to date 5.58%. Just recently started. And by the way, keep in mind that these ETFs, both of these, the Democrat and the Republican one, has only been around since 20. I want to say 20. Let me see. 2023, so there's not really a long track record to compare. So most of the time I'll pair year to date in 1 year, so we can't do 5 years because that ETF haven't been around, so we don't really know the long-term track record. But for the S&P, so currently year to date, that's just kind of just really started year to date. So both of the Democrats and the Republican ETFs are beating the S&P, And let's see if they also beating the NASDAQ for year to date too. So it looks like they are beating the NASDAQ and S&P. You might be thinking, why are you comparing it to the S&P? Because that's kind of like S&P is kind of like the standard that a lot of investors compare. And I also did NASDAQ as well because NASDAQ is more tech stocks. So of course, if the Democrats and Republican Party is investing in more tech stocks, it'd be better to compare it to the NASDAQ than the S&P. Now, also, and I'll go with what exactly are in the top 10 holdings as well. But if we look at the 1 year, I believe I had 28.5%, which end up beating the S&P 1 year at the same time frame, 24.74. Now, it didn't end up beating the Nasdaq because Nasdaq was up, pretty big, 38%, but it did beat the S&P. Now, the cruise one, I think it lagged a little bit, yeah, at 19, but you know, but still, so we got 19th. I would have compared to the 5 years, but keep in mind that the ETF was only around since 2023, so there's not really a long track record there. Now let's go to the top 10 holdings. So the top 10, like let's look at the sectors weighting. So 41% of this is in tech. That's why I looked at the S&P and Nasdaq because it is a little tech heavy. But so you can argue so is the S&P. The S&P, yeah, I can't recall how much tech, but the S&P tech is a little tech heavy as well. So for the top 10 holdings, big names: Nvidia, Microsoft, Amazon, Salesforce, Apple, Google, American Express, Costco's, Netflix, and Meta. So we pretty much got the Magnificent Seven or whatever they call them, but the big hitters. Now, when we all we can also go to pulled up already. It's see this one. Theirs is not as tech heavy. It's a little bit more, technology, industry. Technology is only 20%. Industry, financial, consumer services, oils and gas, healthcare looks a little bit more diverse. So it looks like they have as far as the top 10 starts the top 10 holdings. They got JP Morgan, Nvidia, Comfort System, Simmons Property, AT&T. So it looks like they have look like they got like oils, insurance, Fidelity, things like that. So they've kind of taken a whole different type approach for their top 10 holdings. But back to Nancy. Um, I wish they literally low key just had a ETF that mimic Nancy. We all know Nancy's the GOAT. So when you look at, assuming this is right, I'm not necessarily sure if this one's right, but 2000s, 2014, Nancy has performed 795%, where the S&P has only did 223%. Now, this particular site kind of allows, I think if you pay it, allows you to mimic her trades. As you see, she goes from 2013, 121 million to like 231 million. So it's looking pretty good for her. And let's look at here's another one where it kind of end up showing their um how many securities that they end up purchasing, and we can kind of go over some of Nancy Pelosi's big plays. As far as, for example, she was able to get into Tesla. I think the Disney stimulus news, Nvidia before the American Semiconductor funding was announced. She also timed the Netflix buy on June 18th perfectly. It was released on July 14th that Netflix was entering the video game space. Some other nice ones, some nice games with Microsoft, PayPal, and things like that. So it looks like that. I just kind of do videos. Look, we can look at her stock options, how she's kind of doing there, and so she's been kind of doing very well it may be some inside trading there, but uh, I digress. So yeah, I think I covered everything that I wanted to cover. Let me know in the comments below what you thinking. If you haven't already, make sure you hit the like button. If you haven't already, make sure you hit the like button. If you're new, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Ah.